Hello and welcome to Chapter 14, which is on team leadership. My name is Mike DiBartolomeo, and I'm excited to share this chapter with you today. I'm hoping you'll get a good sense of what this chapter entails and take away some ideas of how you can integrate this chapter into your own professional practice. So let's get started. When most people think about teams, what they're really thinking about is one of two different types of teams. Either A, traditional sports teams, as you see here, and you can think about any professional sport or growing up about the teams that you were on. And here we have the New Zealand national rugby team. Or what we're really experiencing now, which is more of an organizational team that may be comprised of people from all different backgrounds, be comprised of people from all different departments, or may be restricted to just a single department. But what we're also experiencing right now is more of a traditional virtual team. So many of us are still working virtually and having that experience of being a virtual employee and all that comes with that, good, bad, and different. But what we're going to focus on today in Chapter 14 is team leadership. So what is a team? Well, Susan Colger-Hill defines a team as any type of organizational group that is composed of members who are independent, share common goals, and who must coordinate their activities to accomplish these goals. So think about your own team and think about the way that your own team actually operates. Right now, you can be face-to-face or virtual, but as you really start to think about your organization, think about whether your team is clearly defined. Does everyone have clear roles within your team? Or are the roles a little bit more loose and a little bit more open to interpretation? Are you working towards a common goal? I know in my organization right now, I work at a small private college. There are pockets that are working towards common goals, but I don't believe that we're necessarily all working as an organization and as a larger team to one common goal, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. And finally, is everybody in sync with each other? It means that all the people that are working to complete these goals, are they actually working together to make that happen? Well, why is that important? Why is it important that things are clearly defined, we're working towards a common goal, and we're all in sync with each other? Well, it's important because effective organizational teams offer greater productivity because they get to the heart of what they're trying to accomplish. They also, in these limited budget times, make better use of resources and are typically better at making decisions and problem solving. Also, if you're from more of a products versus services or services versus products, you tend to churn out better quality in terms of what your organization can produce when you are effective as an organization. And finally, which I think is one of the most important pieces of an effective organization, is that innovation and creativity tend to grow and tend to really take off in more effective organizational teams. So as our text talks about, the Hill model for leadership really asks a few main questions. One is, what is the type of intervention that should be used? Is it intervention that should be more monitoring and looking what is going on from a leadership perspective? Or should the intervention be more action taken from the leader's perspective? And we'll talk about that very shortly. Should the intervention be targeted at just an internal level or an external level? And in my opinion, that's going to really depend on what the makeup of your organization is. If you are within a department, within an organization that really only focuses on internal customer service, well, then obviously most of what you're going to do is going to be on an internal level. However, if you're like me and work in college admissions and enrollment, most of what we do is very much on an external level. So that's going to completely depend upon your organization and what the needs are for your organization. And finally, what leadership actions can be implemented to improve team functioning? So as a leader within your team, what can you do to ensure that your team is really operating at an optimal level? And that's an important thing to take consideration about. So Hill has a great chart that she has in her actual presentation. They call it the model for team leadership. And there's really 4 steps or layers in the team leadership model. At the top layer is effective team performance, and it begins with the leader's mental mode of the situation, and then determining if the situation requires action or monitoring. At the second layer is really, is it an internal or external leadership level? Third talks about, is it task, relational, or environmental? So you might select a function depending on the type of intervention, and we'll talk about that as we kind of go down here. And then the bottom is correctly performing all those above steps to create performance through development and maintenance functions. So if we go from left to right, looking at the internal task functions. Internal task functions focus on goals by clarifying or getting agreement. They restructure plans, processes, or roles in order to gain desired results, which can be called process improvement. They guide the decision-making process so that better information is obtained and that coordination is better and that they can focus on issues, on the actual issue at hand. And train members through both formal and informal means. So there might be professional development, professional training, and then some of it might just be as simple as job shadowing. Maybe putting one person from one department next to another person geographically so they can learn from each other and teach each other. And that's a really powerful thing to be able to do. And then also they assess performance, and really kind of help to maintain standards. Internal relationship functions work on that, just as it says, the relationships. So they coach team members. They use more collaborative methods to involve all the team members. So they might survey team members or ask questions to determine if the environment itself is collaborative. They try to manage and mitigate conflict to the best of their ability. They also build commitment through really this kind of ethos leadership. So they try to build commitment with an all-in approach and while satisfying team members' needs. But they also, from a relationship perspective, leaders model what they expect from their team members. Finally, and on the third from the left, is really the environmental functions. What are those external leadership actions from an environmental standpoint? Well, leaders might be networking to increase their influence and gather other information. They might be advocating to represent their team so that it shows them at their best. I know I really try to do that. I'm going to talk about that in my POP, how my connection is to that. They get support for their team by gathering resources and recognition for the actual team. So I always like to say to my team, what do you need to be most effective at your position? And what do we need as a team to be most effective in executing whatever the task is that we're trying to do? That's a very important piece of the process, because if you do not provide the resources and the recognition for your team, then from a support standpoint, they may not feel that they're being supported from a pragmatic level and from a relational level. They also buffer the team from environmental distractions. So what does that mean? That means that they do their best to really create a barrier around their team. So that might be representing your team and then deciding that you will then kind of mitigate any issues that you can deal with before you have to bring them to your team, or really trying to be insular with your actual team to minimize those distractions. And then they also assess the environment through other performance indicators, right? We try to do that. So we want to determine the performance indicators and their impact on the organization. And finally, share the information with the team, right? Information sharing is such an important part. So we see all of that really in this case study. So I chose the higher education case study 14.2, which really talked about Christine Winchester. Christine Winchester was the youngest member of the voice department faculty at a college. And what distinguished her is that she was more of had more of an educational background versus a practical background. So while other faculty members lacked advanced degrees, they had more professional experience. And that automatically created this almost dissension between faculty who were considered to be more of the professional faculty and lacked those advanced degrees, and Christine, who had traditional formal educational training. Now, what happened in this case study was that Christine was asked to chair the reaccreditation of the music program, this reaccreditation for the National Association of Schools of Music. And she took it on head on. And what she quickly learned in the first meeting was that she thought she would get some quick buy-in by just speaking to faculty and asking them to revise the sections that most of them already authored in the previous accreditation cycle 10 years ago. However, she was immediately met by resistance. And this is really a form of silent resistance. So when she collected the reports back and started to go through them, she noticed immediately that the previous reports from 10 years ago were basically turned back in, And basically the dates were just revised. So she knew pretty early on in this process that she was not going to be able to get the buy-in and get the help with her as the leader in the current structure and the way that it was being executed. So what did Christine do? Well, she realized that relationship building was very important and had to occur. So she took the initiative to meet with every faculty member individually and really learn more about them, about their professional background, and how their professional background can lend to different sections of the reaccreditation process. And what she also did was that she made suggestions for revisions based on what she learned about the actual other colleagues. And that was important because what she was doing, in a sense, was relationship building. And she was really trying to learn more about those people and really find how her leadership can help guide them based on this new relationship that they were forming. Well, the payoff was great, actually. On the downside, it took all year, but the report was completed. It took a lot of organization on her part. It took a lot of time on her part, more than probably she originally anticipated, but it was completed and it was approved by NASM. And more importantly, and this is where we come to information sharing, she thanked everyone for their hard work and their progress, and she brought everyone back together. And that was really a collective effort to let everyone know that all of their hard work was really paying off. So I chose to look at the top 3 line questions, which I think were very important, which is that based on the Hill model, what leadership decisions did Christine make when deciding whether to intervene in her team's functioning? Well, clearly she knew that she needed to work on those internal leadership actions, right? Some of them were very easy about just kind of goal focusing, structuring for results. But where she lacked in was that relationship, was that really getting down to the heart of it and talking with those faculty members and finding out what was needed. And I'm going to talk about that in question 3 because it does get to that point. So I think some things that she did well was actually goal focusing, and she thought she was structuring for results. And that's the interesting, she thought she was structuring for results. So did Christine need to take an internal or external leadership actions to get the team to function effectively? Well, the majority of what she did was internal, because this is something that she needed to handle as the leader of this, as the chair of this person who's leading this reaccreditation process. However, it was important from an external relationship that she was also trying to advocate for the actual process of the accreditation. She also was very important to information share. Now, this is treated traditionally as an external leadership action, but yet it can be handled internally because this is something she was doing within the organization itself. And then finally, many of her actions are relational, as I said before. Could she have used more task actions to achieve the team's goals? Absolutely, without a question. I think one area that Christine clearly missed out was that she assumed that because she was sending the faculty members back with their original 10-year ago proposals, that she thought they were just going to maintain that structure. And I think what she learned was that she needed to be much more forthcoming with how to actually maintain those standards. So my recommendation to Christine would have been to almost create a template, one which the faculty members could have really filled out. And I think that would have given her a lot more of a leeway to work with these faculty members. So connecting this to my own problem of practice. So I've spoken to some of you before, but my POP is really focused on communication and improving it interdepartmentally within small colleges, and therefore improving communication with students in the enrollment funnel. So for those that are not in enrollment management, the enrollment funnel traditionally goes from a student who's an inquiry to an applicant to an admit. They then deposit and become an enrollee for their length of their tenure at the institution, and eventually a graduate. So my issue that I am hoping to work through in this program is really trying to find out if we improve communication interdepartmentally within a small college, will we then improve communication with students and improve their experience throughout this enrollment funnel? So most of you are probably aware that small colleges are really trying to mitigate the loss of students, or what is called attrition, because every student really matters, not only from a revenue standpoint, but every student really matters from a community standpoint. So I'm hoping to find ways in which we can do that a small caveat, if it can be through the use of technology, I'm really interested in that as well. So I think for each of the three areas, there's some clear delineation and connections based on what I'm looking to do. The first is by the internal task functions. So there's three things I'm really hoping we'll be able to mitigate and really come to a focus on. The first is clarifying what the goal is. Now, it's easy to say that, well, we want to be able to communicate better with students, but that has many different ways in which we can do that. So I'm working on trying to focus on what that actually means. The second is, how do we improve the process of doing that? And how do we improve it as a department, as a division, and then as a college, as we scale all the way up through the ladder? And what does that actually mean? What does improvement mean? Is it something quantitative that we survey and students tell us that yes, they're more satisfied with the communication, or no, they're not satisfied? Do we work with employees to be able to create that assessment? Do we do both? Do we do neither? So these are some of the internal task functions that we're working through as an institution. Internally, there's a lot of work that has to happen. Two main pieces, though, are the coaching and the managing conflict. So like many small colleges and universities, we have really 2 or 3 different groups of employees. One is faculty, many faculty of which who have been there quite a long time and are very set in their ways of how they interact with students. 2 is administrators, and the administrators are people like myself who are non-faculty, non-teaching, but really kind of are there for the day-to-day. And then we have kind of this division of those that have been here for a very long time, whether they were faculty or administrator or not, and those that are very new. And some age comes with that, some technical capabilities come with that. And it's really about how do we make sure that we can, one, coach team members to the best of their ability properly. And secondly, how do we manage conflict so that we minimize it interdepartmentally and within divisions and ultimately within the college? And then the last piece is the actual external environmental factors. So there's a lot involved in this. Obviously, within the enrollment funnel and improving communication, there is a lot of networking and advocating. So as an institution, we have to network with other constituencies, other stakeholders external to the campus. And also it's all about advocating for the education and the experience of students. We also have to shield from distractions. I mean, we're located in Rockland County, New York, which touches Manhattan. There's obviously a plethora of different colleges and universities in the area that have very different budgets than us, have very different capabilities than us, have very different spending habits than us. So those are all what I would consider to be very much external environmental distractions. Really trying to not chase after what other institutions are doing from a communication standpoint, but trying to really focus on what we are doing as an institution. And finally, and this is something that I'm hoping we are going to expand greatly after our new president starts actually on July 1st of this year in a few days, and that is information sharing. So one thing that we need to work to as an institution is being much more transparent, not necessarily with families external to the campus, but being more transparent with each other. And that comes down to a little bit of an external environmental function. So if I'm in admissions or enrollment, one thing that I would like to do is be much more transparent with all of our stakeholders on campus about how are we doing and what can they do to help us. So those are some of the things that I'm hoping we'll be able to do in connecting my problem of practice to chapter 14, which is team leadership. I hope you've been able to get a better sense of it. I've included some references here. Thank you very much. And I look forward to virtually speaking to all of you in the very near future. Take care.